I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Julie.
Mayor Mahler,
Present.
Counselor Gerson, Counselor Trask,
Present.
Counselor Gorley,
Present.
Counselor Coleman, present, Counselor Sanchez,
Here.
Counselor Richards.
Present.
Let the record show we have all 7 present with no absent. At this time, you can do the online meeting notes, please. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone who is joining us. For members of the public who would like to participate in this meeting, we have some instructions to help you if you are new to using Microsoft Teams. Notice the icon in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. The second one from the left is a chat bubble icon. If you wish to be recognized by the mayor to speak, please choose the bubble icon to enter into the meeting chat. It will appear on the right-hand side of your screen. First, enter your name, address, and phone number in the chat, followed by the topic you wish to discuss. If you wish to speak at any point during the meeting, you can choose the hand icon, also located in the upper right-hand corner. It is the equivalent of raising your hand. Then the mayor, acting chairperson, or moderator will ask you to speak at the appropriate time. We'll give everyone a few moments now to enter their name, address, and phone number and topic they'd like to address with the council in the meeting chat. We will ask in the interest of time that people not repeat previous speaker. Instead, state you agree with their point or disagree with their point. Each speaker will be allotted 3 minutes. Any extension of that time is at the sole discretion of the mayor or the meeting chairperson per the council rules. The moderator will note those joining by phone for the mayor or chairperson. The fact that the meeting is online does not excuse poor behavior. The mayor retains the right to have people removed from the meeting as stated in the council rules.
Thanks, Julie. This time consent agenda.
Second.
Motion second by roll call, please.
Mahler.
Yes.
Counselor Gerson.
Yes.
Counselor Trask.
Yes.
Counselor Gorley.
Yes.
Counselor Coleman.
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes.
Counselor Richards.
Let the record show I have 7 ayes, no nays for approval of the consent agenda. At this time, recognition of visitors and hearing of petitions. Anybody from the public would like to come forth be heard? Yeah. 1 second. Please come forth. And we'll need name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. Lori Turner. My address is 1617 Main Street. Live there right across from Sweet Home Safeway. At the forum last week, which was really informative, was kind of my first step into politics on what's happening in Sweet Home. And I thought it was really informative. So you're going to see a lot more of me. At that point, I raised the issue that there is a concern about the domesticated rabbit population throughout Sweet Home. And I know I have 3 minutes. I want you to know that I'm working with a few other people, my sister, Lisa Legg, also Diane McIntosh. Lisa, all the way up on 39th, also has a rabbit in her backyard, as I do. I have a handout, if you would take a look at the handout that I prepared for you. Because I'm not going to have a chance to really cover every aspect of what needs to be discussed. I wanted to just let you know, I believe there's a problem here. I believe it needs to be managed humanely, and we need to figure out how to do that. I've proposed a basic process because you should know there is not a process in place for managing it at all today. Right now, what happens is someone will call City Hall, talk to Julie or a city manager, maybe not quite yet, but and they will tell you to call the code enforcement. Code enforcement, when you speak with them, will tell you there's nothing they can do. That's the process that's in place. The idea that came up in the forum last week was that this is a county problem and that perhaps the county could help. I did call Lynn County Animal Control, and they said this is absolutely a city problem. So you see, there's no process in place. It happens every day, right? Let's fix that. So I think the basic steps are we need to identify where these animals are. We need to get them captured. And then we need to figure out how to dispose of them. I think the first two steps are pretty easy. The disposable part, getting rid of them, is not going to be so easy. There's no shelters that will take them. They cannot be butchered for food. And I'll leave it at that because I don't have much more time to go through. So I've listed those things. I do think we need, before we take any steps whatsoever, like talk about not feeding them, or we need to get an idea of how big this problem really is. So on the opposite side of the page, my one and only ask from the City Council is that we begin to collect the data as to where these rabbits are, what's the quantity, and whether or not they're babies. And I think that the appropriate place for this to go, this is my recommendation, not my demand. The best place was probably be have Colby do this when he gets calls regarding rabbits, to start collecting this information. In turn, I've also listed in this document other things that me and my friends will be working on the disposal aspect, where we can identify additional humane traps. But first, we want to find out how big the problem really is. That's all I have.
Well, thanks for coming this evening.
Thank
I
you.
got Mr. Mayor, how many calls have we had complaining about rabbits in the city? Anybody know?
In my time here in the city, the past 3 years, this past week has been the first time that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I think that's going to be I have them down my street, and it depends on what time it is, because I usually see them early in the morning or later in the evening when it's dark. But there's probably 20 of them down my street.
I obviously it was the first of my knowledge of this, but I think Second Avenue, I've seen a lot of rabbits.
Yeah.
I've actually seen a lot of rabbits on Long Street. I mean, up and down Long Street. So that was the only sightings I've seen rabbits in the area. Obviously, we need to address this, from the city level. I mean, when referral to the county handles the dogs, the cats, animal control of county. We don't have animal control here at city level. But I mean, we can see what we can do to help look into this and see what we can figure out a solution. But
You hear me? Am I loud enough? Never loud enough. Okay, there we go. Now I'm loud enough. Thank you, Julie. Okay, so as Director Larson had talked about, this is really the first time in the past week or so that this was brought to our attention. So we have been doing a little bit of research and trying to find out a little bit more about the rabbits. And I'm also going to talk to the Lynn County Sheriff's Office and talk to animal control, because especially where these are domestic rabbits that have been let loose, that might still be under their jurisdiction. So we can kind of talk about that. There's actually, it is just sending out into the community, please do not release your rabbits. It is unlawful to do so. It is also part of ORS 498.0520. It's considered unlawful both to release the rabbits or even to let them roam free. Part of that reason, too, is that unvaccinated rabbits can carry rabbit hemorrhage disease virus, which is not harmful to any other mammals, but is very harmful to rabbits. And there's actually a bit of an epidemic going on throughout the state of Oregon regarding this particular virus. So keeping your rabbits contained, and if you do have a domestic rabbit that you're keeping as a pet, please don't let it get exposed to some of these feral rabbits, because it could lead to its death, and hopefully it's vaccinated. So that being said, I have also reached out to all of the sanctuaries around here and are waiting to hear back, and we're going to be forming a little bit of a network to see what can be done. Most of the rabbits do seem to be thriving here, which is, let's say,
it's an interesting issue, but it's happening in a few other cities, and cities are reacting to it in different ways. Some of them are embracing their rabbit population and actually using it almost as a tourist type of attraction. Others are seeing, like Las Vegas is a good example. They're seeing such a large population of rabbits that now they're trying to figure out how to eradicate the rabbits, and it's a multi-million-dollar issue for them. So I think us trying to look at it soon would be good. There may be as easy of a solution as adoption for some of the rabbits. There's different rescues and things around in the area that I've reached out to. So we'll have to come back once we're getting more of a response from them and come up with a better plan. But the positive thing is it's very rare for rabbits to spread any type of contagious disease to humans or other mammals. And the other piece is if you don't want them in your yard, keeping your grass and weeds and things low will kind of help deter them, as well as having fences. And please don't, well, let's put it this way. If you feed rabbits, there are probably going to be more rabbits in the neighborhood. So I would be very cautious about feeding the rabbits. So and that's where we're at right now, but be happy to discuss this some more.
My problem is I don't have a garden. My biggest issue is my complete backyard is covered with rabbit food. And while I pick it up every day, I got a bucket full every day. So I'm sure I have more than one rabbit, but I've only seen one. Unfortunately, I named him Milo. That wasn't an invitation for him to stay. Not that he knew the difference, but so the rabbit poo, I think, can lead to more serious health issues. So I think that's a problem. That's all I have.
I did read that eggshells might deter them, so you might want to try that. But yes, but I don't really know.
Thank you all.
Thanks for coming
Thank
this
you.
evening and letting them bring us all this information to attention.
So Mr. Mayor, there's a couple of things. One, I know Cannon Beach is one of the communities that has embraced the rabbits. But and there's a fox in my yard, so I never see any rabbits. But I think about this, and we used to have a duck problem down at Sankey Park, and I think we did a buck a duck type situation, and we no longer have a duck problem down at Sankey Park. The other thing is last Easter, and you're gonna laugh on this, I went to Roth's to buy a rabbit so we could have rabbit. And for those of you who like rabbit, they're $25 a piece right now. And so, you know, I know there's a lot of people who eat rabbit but hadn't thought about it. And I was curious as to why you said you can't eat them. And so, but I don't know that people have just thought about that because $25 a piece is quite a bit for a rabbit.
Mr. Mayor, when, if I may, when Tommy, our code enforcement guy, was there before, I complained about the 50 cats down by my house, and one of my neighbors was feeding them, and he went down and told them, not only this applies to rabbits, but he said that he told her that if they're going to feed them, it's her responsibility to take care of them. She couldn't take care of all of them because, but she quit doing it, and she's feeding the rabbits. She's about 4 houses up from me, and she's feeding the rabbits. And there are little ones.
Problem is, they also reproduce quite a bit. So quite quickly. So yeah, reproduction is fast. Yeah. Thanks again for coming this evening and bringing it to our attention. We'll see what we can do. Next up, anybody else would like to come forth, be heard before the council? Okay. We have a visitor this evening for the government portfolio advisors. If you'd like to come forth and be, good evening. How are you? Oh, pretty good. Thanks for coming. And name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor Maller, fellow council members. My name is Garrett Cudahy. I'm Chief Investment Officer and Principal Government Portfolio Advisors. We serve as a financial advisor to the city. I'm from Salem, so address is 465 LaFell Street South in Salem, Oregon. So I hope to make this as entertaining as the last conversation. That's the first time I've heard of a problem like that. And whenever we deal with our city or county clients, we always find the challenges you face are varied and quite unique and sometimes surprising. So 2 ground rules before going on. I had a cavity this afternoon filled, so if I'm giving you a sneer or a weird look, or I'm slurring my speech, it's really the Novocaine wearing off. And 2, this is really your time, so interrupt me as you want. I'd rather this be interactive than me just flipping through a lovely slide deck and talking about first what's going on in the markets, then 2, what's going on with your program and portfolio. Good news is, I'm sure you all know, markets have been, I think mayhem's probably a good professional word for what's been going on really the last 2.5 years, but especially this year because it's negative mayhem. We always like positive mayhem. So you guys are in good position there. So if we could flip through a few slides, I want to just briefly touch on, we love charts in my industry. This is the interest rate curve. On the left-hand side is overnight interest rates, and all the way on the right-hand side is 30-year interest rates. This is a very unique time. Interest rates are at 15-year highs. And that's because inflation is approximately 25-year highs. The two often go together. The other very interesting thing is you see what we call the kink or the inversion of that interest rate curve. For example, today, the highest interest rate point on the entire treasury curve is around 1 year. That is symbolic of a market saying, we think interest rates are going to temporarily be high to re-equilibrate the economy, i.e. bring inflation down, which ironically, the rabbit thing might help you. Because outside of housing, food inflation is the only thing keeping it up today. So you might have a really viable solution here. And then interest rates are expected to go back down, right? That's why you see this unique inversion of the curve. And that's really what's going on with broad markets, stock markets, et cetera. This is a self-induced, a policy-induced period of pain in order to ensure inflation does not get embedded in the economy and keep running away. And this is really helpful for you all. As you guys reinvest your money, whether it's the cash you have at the state treasury or anything you invest with us, you can expect meaningful support to your budgets through these interest rates that are 4.5, even north of 5% in highly liquid, highly conservative investments. So it is good news. We've endured the pain, and now looking forward, things look quite better from that perspective. Next slide, if you would. This is just what I was mentioning. This is a really scattered chart, but I will just tell you that the green line is where the Federal Reserve members, those that vote and set interest rates for the economy and frankly the world, because the US dollar looms so large and our economy is so meaningful globally, that is what they project interest rates to be, right? And so they think today we're about 3.25%. They expect to get up to 4.5, 5% at the end of this year to early next year. And then you'll notice that green line starts to peter back down. They think, much like pre-COVID, before the disruptions happen, we operate more in a 1.5 to 2.5% interest rate world. That makes a lot of sense to most economists and most people that put a lot of thought in this. And then the other lines are interesting as well. The white, the purple, and the red line are what's the market think? And the market's pretty consistent with the Fed. That's good news when you see a lot of turmoil where markets don't agree with the Fed or vice versa. That's when you have a lot of friction in markets. So we think we're about to enter a little bit more of a calm period going over the next few months. I like to say we've all come to terms with it now. Hey, we thought inflation wouldn't get this high. I was certainly in that camp. I thought it'd be a little high, but not 8% like we are. And we all thought it'd be coming down. It was much more related to stimulus and the disruptions of COVID. Because stimulus, keep in mind, we put $5.8 trillion into a $24 trillion economy in 12 months. That is a giant boost. And it turns out we didn't really need all of that, right? Given the efficacy of vaccines and the virus wasn't indeed as deadly as we kind of thought. But that's the state of the land now. And that's not I don't mean this to be a sales pitch like hurry up now, but nobody really expects rates to stay this high for that long. So it is really beneficial to have Kelsey on board and look at your program, because you guys are in a highly liquid state now to take advantage of some of this and again add significant funds back into your budget through just interest rates alone. Next slide, if you would. This is the inflation problem. Yeah, at first, when this was all becoming dislocated, it was really clear that the supply chain was having problems. Nobody really knew if stimulus was enough, too much, or whatnot. In hindsight, of course, it was too much. But I thought inflation would peak out around 5.5, not 8, 8.5. The good news, and it's really hard to see, is on the bottom right-hand corner of that chart, is the month-over-month numbers are now flattening out. So one way to get a year-over-year rate of change down mathematically is to stop it going up month-over-month, and in 12 months of all that flattens out. We are seeing early signs of that. I'm pretty sure most of you in the room can understand that the housing market really ran into a brick wall about 3-4 months ago. In fact, we got data today. It's actually the worst month-over-month housing price decline since March of 2010. I think we all remember 08-09. By no means this is going to be an 08-09 scenario. That was a highly over-leveraged speculative market. This is just one where, probably like the stock market, we all got a little too exuberant. Things were cheap and easy to do, and we all got excited about doing them. And we're probably going to just retrace that price pattern back down to a more reasonable level, which is good, because housing makes up 30 to 40% of the inflation basket, right? Food, another 15, 20%. So if you can cure food and housing, most other things are kind of noise in the background because they're such small components. Even energy's 10%. We don't really control that one as well. But this, I like to say this is good news. I like to be optimistic despite the backdrop in the market. Things are getting fixed, and by golly, the Fed's going to ensure that happens as well, whether they have to keep pushing rates and keep them there or not. Next slide, if you would. This is what markets think. This is really important. I thought, well, let me just back up. This is implied. There's Treasury inflation protected securities in the market where they pay you inflation plus a rate. And so what we can do mathematically is derive out what do markets, the trillion-dollar bond markets, say is going to be, what do they think inflation is going to be? So this is looking at the 1 to 30-year measures of implied inflation in the market, real people putting significant money at stake. So it's a kind of a betting market, not just a survey. And that got out of hand, as you can see, beginning of this year, became very, very nervous, very unglued. A lot of people thought we're going back into the 70s time period. That is not the case anymore. That data I just showed you, evidence from the housing market we all feel and see, as well as the Fed saying, heck or high water, we're going to fix this problem whether you like it or not. We are the adult in the room. If this is painful, it'll be painful, but we can't have a repeat of 70s and 80s. It's economically damaging, right? So that's good news. The entire inflation curve from overnight all the way to 30 years now thinks inflation will be 2.5%. That's good news. That's normal. That's kind of where we were pre-COVID. So this is also leading me to think, I think the worst may be behind us. The volatility should calm down, and we should start to deal with the problems in front of us and see them start to be resolved going forward. Next slide, if you would. This is a measure of wage inflation. There's 3 of them on there. The orange one is the most frequent we get. Comes out every month. We get the Bureau of Labor Statistics as their non-farm job report. It's very pivotal to markets. And the other 2 are kind of wonky measures, but more holistic and compositionally adjusted measures. This is really problematic for the Fed. And I hate to say it, Jay Powell and the Federal Reserve will never tell you, but they don't want you to get paid this well. Because the one sure way to keep inflation above 2% is pay everyone 5%, right? That looks like inflation's headed toward 5. So when the labor market became disrupted post-COVID, and believe it or not, population adjusted, we have about 6 to 8 million less workers than we should working today. We just recovered the lost jobs from COVID, but our population, working age population, is now that much larger. So we're having tight labor markets, but the economic growth is slowing. It's cooling down. Housing market obviously is one of them. They employ significant amount of people. So we are starting to see these measures peter out, that the orange number is starting to roll over. That's a great sign. We're also seeing job openings decline quite dramatically. They were at a record high. Those are coming off significantly. That's a good leading indicator. So good news here. Again, pointed the right direction. We're not through the woods yet, but we're coming to terms with where we are. I think it's resolving itself. We all think it's starting to resolve to a more equilibrium state, which is good. we can hopefully put the chaos behind us. One quick note too, that I don't have a slide for this, but it's a stunning number just in the United States alone. If you look at the total losses in the stock and the bond market, just since the start of this year, almost 10 months, to $18 trillion. We've never had anything remotely close to this, because typically when stocks go down, bonds do well. And this year, bonds were the problem that drug stocks down. Very unique time. We've never seen anything like this before. So it's really, really interesting. And this is why it's really important we get back to equilibrium. This unsustainable state of interest rates and stocks both having a hard time is going to bleed into the economy, because these are the ways that business gets done. You either get a loan, you issue debt, or you sell your company and it gets capital in the system, gets things done. So if we don't get this right, it will start to seize up, right? That's when you get the recession. That's when you get those fears. So it's important we get this right. And I think that's it for all the slides. I know that's a lot, but I just want to kind of touch on the market backdrop. It's been chaotic, but I think we're settling out. It's a good environment for you now going forward. But are there any questions? And this can be fun or creative. It doesn't have to be about what I talked about. So,
Any questions of council?
Would you like some rabbits?
here's my vehicle. It's out front. Okay, perfect. Well, let's go on and talk a little bit about your program and what's been going on in your portfolio. The good news is not much, which is by design. We were being pretty conservative going into this. We didn't play it perfectly, but we knew it was a rising rate environment, so we went slow. And then we really stopped a few months ago when the chaos started to unfold, and you guys were having some turnover and issues around liquidity, spending needs. So you're in a really good spot. But we'll flip through a little bit about where you are, a little bit about where we see you getting to once we kind of work through some of the near-term challenges around liquidity, spending, and make sure, because we do not ever want to have you in a liquidity pinch. That's job number one. Who cares what you can earn if you can't pay your bills, right? That the future doesn't matter if the now doesn't happen, right? So we want to make sure we're doing that. So if you would flip through. First, I want to talk about what are we doing, right? You have the option of sending all of your money down to the state. There's a limit on the LGIP of about $56 million. You could send it all there. You guys don't go over that limit like some of the larger cities or counties in the state. That's a fine option. However, in economic theory, this year aside, because of the chaos element, it's almost always true that if you give somebody a loan for longer than overnight, you're going to get paid more. And if you do that behavior over and over and over for 10, 20, 30 years, that's how you compound and accrue more wealth, right? So what your city's program is designed to do is exactly that for the first goal. Make sure you have enough liquidity on hand at all times. We work in close connection with Kelsey and her predecessors was to make sure that's happening. And then if that's happening, how can we safely buy super high quality assets? You guys are very constrained by statute to harvest just a little bit more income and keep doing that over time, over time, over time. Number two is to diversify. In that same aspect, overnight money, which is the LGIP, it goes up and down as the Federal Reserve moves interest rates, where your longer term investment portfolio works almost exactly in opposite of that. The LGIP did really well this year because cash didn't move and everything else sold off, right? However, there's going to be another side to this hill at some point, I promise you that. Fed will cut rates and we will have a bad economic time. We will be equilibrate back to that 2% long-term interest rate. LGIP is going to go down and we're going to go up in value, right? We're going to be happy we did that. So these two really work well in tandem. So that's a really good design element. Then the last one, I don't want to lean too heavily on this, but it is important. I don't lean too heavily on it because I used to work at State Treasury. My wife still does in the banking team, so she doesn't want me saying this. But you just never know whether it's a cyber attack or an outage of any size or any type that perhaps would inhibit the Treasury from getting you your funds when you need them. Having the funds that we manage for you, it's in a separate bank account. It's in Zion's bank. So it would have a layer of resiliency of, hey, we have a second layer of funds we can access. We may or may not book a loss or gain, but in an emergency, don't worry about those things as your first priority. But it does add a layer of resiliency just to the city's finances and access to funds. And then I just want to talk about what are we doing? It's a buy and hold approach. We are not trading these, buying and selling them, booking gains and losses. We ride through these markets, right? We have liquidity solved for. We don't need to sell them to raise funds. That's goal number one. So now when we have these unrealized losses as rates have gone up, we don't sell it. We don't realize the loss. You're not going to book a loss. We'll just ride them back to maturity and reinvest them back out. Conversely, in March of 2020, when interest rates hit historic lows because of COVID, we also didn't book the gains because we wanted to capture that income. The theory and the fundamental, what are we doing, still remains the same. We ride through these cycles, so we don't book that. We target maturities 5 years and in. That's kind of by design as well. In the simple way of saying that is risk in fixed income securities or bond markets linear. A 10-year security is 10 times riskier than a 1 year. Mathematically, it almost never yields 10 times more. So we kind of go out to 5 years. That's a tolerable sweet spot where you don't have too much volatility. Believe it or not, the 30-year bond has more historical volatility than the stock market, just because it's got so much mathematical risk and as rates move around. So this is kind of a sweet spot to balance the risks for you guys and harvest that long-term return in a prudent way. And then what we buy is mostly treasuries and agency securities, government guaranteed or government supported and owned, like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, not the mortgage securities, but the fixed debt securities that they issue, as well as municipals. Taxable municipal market is quite a good market, as well as high quality corporate securities that are rated AA and above, right? So the Walmarts of the world, the Apple computers, very, very big household names that are very resilient. And so that's what we do. And then the last bullet is just always like, it's a patient approach. We really think of this as 10, 20, 30-year game of optimizing wealth, not a let's get tomorrow's market right. We're not geared for that. You're not geared for that. That's not our goal. It's a long-term patient strategic approach. Any questions there before we kind of move on and look a little bit at the portfolio?
Any questions of council?
You guys are making it easy on me. Okay. All right, next slide, please. This is a look at where your core fund is today. I'll front run a little bit and give context. We think your core portfolio should be about 7 million. You're only about 3.75 million, $4 million. And that's what I said, the pause out. We didn't grow you to where you should be because the market started to fall apart. We said, let's just pause this out and wait, as well as some of the liquidity issues and turnover. And we're also conservatively positioned for interest rate risk. That's the bottom box. We're technically geared for a rising rate environment. And then we're very conservatively positioned on the top right. You're mostly treasury securities. Again, by design, when you have these chaotic markets that are just going one direction, let's stay safe. And now we're kind of at that point, I think we're calming down. We can kind of redeploy that into other securities now that we get a little bit better sense of where are we going. But very clean bill of health here and pretty well aligned with where we'd like you to be given the market. Next slide, if you would. This is a view of where your program sits, and you guys are in the catbird seat here because your total program has grown with just natural growth as well as some of the ARPA funds and federal stimulus dollars. But 80% of your portfolio, that black line and the percent on the right, 80% of your portfolio is liquid, i.e. has not been exposed to the market volatility at all. That's fantastic. A lot of our clients, cities like yours, probably more in the 15 to 30% range would be their natural run rate of what percent of their portfolio would be liquid. I think you guys naturally are just going to be a little bit higher than that going forward. So you guys have some more spending going on, and you guys have some development and growth that's going on, and perhaps a rabbit program that needs to be funded as well. But you see on the bottom where you are today, you have about 14 million in liquidity. That's at the state treasury and bank accounts. And then you have 3.8 million in the core account. Once you guys get stability, we do think makes a lot of sense to grow that to 7 million. Again, that's just to take advantage of those yields. The LGIP pays 2.2%, but again, we could buy a treasury in 2 years for 2 years at 4.5%. So there's opportunity today. That optimization piece is pretty pronounced today, right? So that's what we'd like to do once you guys once Kelsey gets her feet on the ground and gets the lay of the land and make sure that we're not challenging that liquidity component. Because we'll never invest if we think liquidity will be a problem, right? Next slide, if you would. These next few pages, we could flip through them. We do an investment compliance report. It's always on our dashboard that Kelsey logs into, that we report every month and quarter end. You guys are compliant across all statute and policy elements. That's also a huge goal of ours. Don't violate statute seems like a reasonable thing to do, and we certainly have all the bells, whistles, and systems to make sure that we do that. So you can kind of flip through those two, if you will. Next one as well, please. This is just a snapshot of the portfolio. Again, it just kind of lays out a little bit more details. I don't think we need to read this off to you unless there's any questions about it. We could flip to the next one. This is just a breakout over time. It's been pretty static. We did start to add in some other security types, municipals, corporate securities. That's just kind of, you see that transition over time. We will continue, if we grow your portfolio, continue that expansion. You know, when you get these market sell-offs, this is usually a pretty good time to put money to work in those areas, and we do see value in doing so. Next slide, if you would. Another, just at the core portfolio now, this is just the funds we manage. If you'd flip to the next one. This is performance. I'm really happy with this. We're performing in line with the benchmark, but a good 40% of our portfolio was exposed to things that were not treasury securities, which sold off in price. So anytime you have a 40% of your portfolio underperforming, but you're performing in line with the benchmark, we did something well. And that was our patience, and that was our conservative nature around interest rate risk going in the cycle. You know, we were under duration, the sell-off. And now is probably a good time to close that out. And don't get greedy when you get the inverted yield curve. It's usually a sign of the fund's about to end and things are about to renormalize. So we would like to close that out, and we will see performance rewrite back out. And the reason we feel comfortable in saying that is, again, we're buy and hold investors. We purchase a security with a yield advantage. It can sell off, but ultimately will mature, and we will harvest that premium, that difference over treasuries. And so you guys have weathered this storm thus far. It has been the worst bond bear market ×3 in history. You guys are right in line, which is great. This is exactly what we'd like to see. And that's really kind of the bottom line. I'd like to end it here because the rest of it's pretty boring details that you guys can read on your own time and ask us any questions that you'd like. But are there any other questions about the program markets or?
Any questions from council? No, I think you guys did a great job and
Thank you.
been pretty conservative over the years, so appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for coming this evening.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Take care.
Thank you.
Nothing under old business. We will move on to new business. RCA conditional use application CU 22-12.
So as some of you may be aware, we are turning our attention to Northside Park with some planned improvements. We have some funding allocated for that, specifically for a dog park. The issue that we're running into, as we have with Sankey Park, is that we have multiple parcels that make up Northside Park. And we are in the process of getting those combined. However, one of the things that our code requires, since we didn't previously have a public zone, is that a park like this is a conditional use. And anytime you are changing the parcels, it renews your need for a conditional use. Previous conditional use doesn't cover any changes to the configuration of the parcels. And so in order for us to combine all those into one, we do need a conditional use permit. We hold ourselves to the same standard that we require of any other developer of their property. And so we have to apply for a conditional use permit, and you are the body that would authorize the signing of that application. This is not to approve the application, but simply to authorize the city manager to sign the application so that it can go through the process and have the planning commission review it for approval.
Any
But
questions of council? Council directive.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to authorize the city manager or designee to sign the application CU 22-12.
Motion second by roll call, please.
Counselor Richards?
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez?
Yes.
Counselor Coleman?
Yes.
Counselor Gorley?
Yes.
Counselor Trask?
Yes.
Counselor Gerson?
Yes.
Mayor Muller?
Yes. Show of 7 ayes, no nays. Approval. City manager signing off on the conditional use application CU 22-12. Next up, RCA authorization of newly created position and updated salary schedule.
So this is for our communications manager position. And what we're looking at doing is consolidating the communications coordinator position that was formerly held by Legia, as well as making it a 50-50 communications and 50-50 IT position. So that person would also be able to help with running meetings and setting up computers and helping with iPads and all of those pieces. So that is what we're proposing to the council. We actually believe that this will be a cost savings overall, and we think it'll be really the best fit. Are there any questions about this particular position?
Questions of council?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead.
Can you explain a little bit more about why you think it would be a cost savings to combine the two and make one?
Oh, absolutely. So the reason for that is one, we would have the communications officer who would also be, now the communications manager. So they would be doing all the outreach, the social media aspects, being in our meetings, really reaching out to the community and doing all of our prints and flyers and everything along those lines. It would also be the position of sort of our boots on the ground person who would be helping with our IT projects. So setting up computers, helping with all of the other IT needs that we have, helping with inventory, working with each of our departments and making sure that all of our IT needs are there. We currently have an IT contract that we're continuing to review and to see if that's the best fit moving forward. But we're thinking about shifting the way that we're doing this a little bit by having somebody that is on the ground here so they can really be assessing our needs as far as IT is concerned. So this would be a cost savings because we're not going to have a second IT position and a communications position. This would just be one position instead. Absolutely.
Any other questions?
Right now, for the IT guy, and I understand, I could be wrong, that he only comes a couple times a week possibly?
So we currently have an IT service.
Yes.
And so we have somebody who is here for about 15 hours to do dedicated service for us. And then we have the overall service where we can reach out and get additional support. We're receiving about 34 hours of service per month right now from that IT contract. So we're looking at a way to shift that. So part of that would be taken in-house and then potentially lower those hours with our actual overall service.
But what do we pay them by the hour?
So we do pay them by the hour and we're paying, and then there's also additional projects. We're paying about $7,000 or so a month right now for that service.
That's a chunk of money. Thank you.
Any other questions?
But more of a statement. I know that we have been very, very blessed to have Legia work for us. But I also know that we have had discussion about needing to expand that and would like to have put more and hours and stuff there because there was a need there. And that she was happy with the job she was doing. And so I think that the city could really benefit from doing this.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I think this is a great idea, especially since knowing now that it's a 7,000, which I didn't realize it was that high, and that's a lot of money. So I'm all for it.
So moved as recommended.
Second.
I have a motion and a second by roll call, please.
Counselor Trask,
Yes.
Counselor Gorley,
Yes.
Counselor Coleman,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Richards, Mayor Mahler,
Yes.
Counselor Gerson.
Yes.
Show 7 ayes, no nays, approval of the new created position and updated salary schedule of the IT.
Mr. Mayor, could this is outside of that. So what is your time frame you think you can make this happen? Is it going to be the first of the year or put that out soon?
We'd actually like to, if this is approved, we're going to put it out tomorrow. Julie's been amazing and already has it ready. And then we would like to revise the way that we're doing our IT contract in the next couple of weeks as well.
Okay, good.
Very good. Next up, RCA Regional Disaster Preparedness Planning Service Contract.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you may remember, in June of 2021, we entered into an intergovernmental agreement with the city of Lebanon and the city of Brownsville and the Lebanon Fire District, Brownsville Fire District, and Sweet Home Fire District for regional disaster preparedness planning services. This came out of the fires of fall 2020 and the concerns that we had about being able to meet our needs for emergency operations and assist our neighbors as well, knowing that each of these communities are not going to be the focus when it comes to a disaster that hits Lynn County. And so we do need to work together to help each other through whatever problems may come. Doesn't mean we won't be pursuing other avenues, but we recognize this need. After that IGA was completed or was signed, we put out a request for proposals for planning services to get us started. And that process went through last winter into the spring. Through that process, a firm was identified, WSP USA Solutions, Inc. And we've developed a contract with them and a scope of work, which are before you now, to essentially get a regional emergency operations quick start guide, kind of how to get started working with each other, and then have some recommendations for mutual aid agreements and general planning services for us to get started for this. So the contract, the city of Sweet Home has taken on the role of the fiduciary for this project, but each of the entities that are a part of it would all be putting into it. So we're not bearing the full cost. Full cost is expecting to be around $35,000. Each entity is the agreement among the entities is that the Brownsville Fire District is pretty severely limited with their abilities to fund, and so they have a lower amount that everyone has agreed to at $2,000, and then the rest of the cost is split up evenly among the remaining organizations. So that's the financial. We have this budgeted in our current budget at $20,000, and so our portion would be what was it? I put 6,600. And so I can take any questions you might have. This is the materials are there in front of you.
Any questions of council?
So, Mr. Mayor, I have a question. So, Blair, has every entity approved this already?
Yes.
And so we're the final approval?
So all of the boards of all of these entities have entered into the intergovernmental agreement. The RFP and the selection of the firm and the scope of work were approved by essentially the executives of each of these entities.
Okay.
And since we're the fiduciary, the contract is approved by all of you.
Okay. I just was concerned if we approved this and then somebody wanted something changed, we'd have to go back and do it again, but this is it, right?
The only other signatory to this contract is the firm in themselves.
Thank you.
Any other questions, council?
I talked about this today with Kelsey, but I was wondering why it was $20,000 when we're only going to be spending 69 or whatever it is. And she told me to go home. And she didn't say that obviously, but I was wondering about that. But we've already talked about that. There's two people in there that are not there anymore, so those need to be changed. But other than that, I'm 100% for this. So it's something should have done it a long time ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Any council directive?
So moved as recommended.
Second.
Motion second by roll call, please.
Counselor Gorley,
Yes.
Counselor Trask,
I'm sorry, I was saying. Yes.
Counselor Gerson,
Yes.
Mayor Mahler,
Yes.
Counselor Richards, Counselor Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Coleman.
Yes.
Record show of 7 ayes, no nays, approval of the regional disaster preparedness planning services contract. No ordinance bills, reports of committees.
So, Mr. Mayor, I met with the chamber last week. They are adding a couple.
Mr. Mayor, as you probably know, we tore down the stage at Sankey Park, and we've been looking at a process to get a new one put in there, and it's pretty nice situation that we have. And so that'll be coming before you guys before long when we get all the details we need that Blair needs to get to the council so that we know what's going on. And it seemed like it was a fairly good price, in my opinion, and that could change tomorrow. Anyway, Blair's done a good job on that, and so we're looking forward to moving on.
Any other committee reports? Just one thing I want to add on, it's not really a part of a committee report, but Blair, you want to kind of go over the SEEP grant, concept of get us up to date, the council for changes that's talking about moving forward.
Oh, sorry. Recently, we've been discussing among the committee meetings with those members about weaknesses in the program, because we see various applications that may not have quite the bang for the buck that we're looking for, or may be very repetitive, where you have one applicant coming back to the pot every year or something like that. And there's been some concerns about whether that's the best use of the funding. And so the committee has told me about some things that they'd like to see changed in the program. And we're working through a draft to present to you to see your thoughts on that. So it hasn't risen to the level of the council yet, but just know that in the future, the committee is planning on recommending changes to the program. Probably not anything earth-shattering, but simply being aware of issues that they don't think is the best use of city funds.
Thanks, Blair. Keep up good work on that. Any other committee reports?
Moving items down to the new site for FAC.
Nothing on the mayor's report, city manager's report. There it is.
We had a gas leak on October 8th, as I'm sure you all are aware. And the contractors doing the ODOT project accidentally cut a gas line on the 1600 block. And the fire department, the police department, and Public Works were all amazing and were out there very quickly directing traffic. And school district had this school right there shut down. And what could have been a very dangerous situation actually ended up just being a little bit of a nuisance, I think, for people with having to deal with traffic. So just want to thank them all for their hard work there. And it was amazing how quickly everything was under control as well. So just kind of wanted to report on that. Also, the League of Oregon Cities has a free elected essentials training in Albany coming up that I thought you all might be interested in. On December 5th, there's a new mayor's workshop in case we have a new mayor. And on December 6th, there's an elected essentials for all counselors, and it's recommended for all new counselors and just as a refresher because it goes over all of the rules and regulations and various tips as well. So I can send out the sign up link to everybody after this too. And if anybody's interested, that's always great. And that's it for me. So thank you.
Department Director reports.
Yeah, I would like to really, I'm just super thankful for the people at our agency. We had a really an emergency at the police department a couple of weeks ago. You know, we're the ones that received the 911 calls and go out and handle those. But I think it's the first time in 25 years that I've been here that we've actually had to call 911. I was sitting in my office and I heard one of our dispatchers yell for one of our sergeants, Ryan Cummings, and it was not a friendly, like, hey, come here yell. It was a yell of distress. And so I go running up to the dispatch area and I look in our communications supervisor's office, Penny Leland. She is down on the ground and unresponsive. And it was scary and emotional. And so we called 911. And I'm just super thankful. A lot of our officers there and the people that were there were quick to respond to the situation. Sergeant Ryan Cummings and Officer Hamlin attended to Penny and began doing CPR. And I can't remember if they started CPR prior to the medics arriving or if it was after the medics arrived, but they were there really taking control of that situation. And the medics responded. They worked on Penny what seemed like forever to get her stabilized prior to transport, and they took her to the hospital. And we are so thankful that she is doing well. Her heart did stop, and I'm not sure why that was, but she is already out of the hospital and already actually working a couple hours here and there at work right now. And so I believe that the actions of particularly Officer Hamlin and Sergeant Cummings, I believe that they ended up saving her life. And so I nominated both of them for the Life Saving Award. And at the police department, there's a process that an awards committee and all that, a process that goes through. So Sergeant Hickox is going to look into that and handle that, and we'll see where that goes. So we have great people, and I am super, super thankful for them. And you never expect that to happen in your own home, so to speak. And so
We are so blessed to have such great officers in this community.
thank you.
I asked, regardless of what happens with Officer Hickox and his efforts in trying to secure that, I've asked City Manager Kelsey Young to still recognize these two officers at city level. So hopefully we can bring forth council and honor them.
Would love to do that.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, I've been on a lot of cardiac arrests. And the number that you save is very minimal. And they probably saved her life.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just
just
that simple.
you
Because
have-
they started it right away. And that if you don't do that, it doesn't work. It just doesn't.
You've got we've got some great paramedics too. And you got about 3 to 5 minutes. That's about it. So I commend Officer Hamlin and Sergeant Cummings. Thank you. We need to recognize them.
Absolutely. And also I'd like to, Interim Chief Ogden also worked very well on commanding his team and making sure that everything was taken care of as well. So we'll definitely be doing something more formal in the very near future.
Very good. Any other, well, I do have a question for Greg. We're working on the street to the maintenance. They're doing the curb they're doing the recurbing, the handicap there on the corner. One curious question is since we negotiated with H&H for 4-lane through there, wouldn't it be maybe, I know they've already started the one. What intersection are we? This Dollar Tree.
Talking about 24th.
24th.
Okay.
They're working on that one corner. But we negotiated for 4-lane there, going back to that property. And I think that.
Yeah, so that agreement has been made and signed and recorded. The agreement stipulates that the the action that it will remain status quo until road construction and development occurs. With the ODOT ramp project, their project is limited to just the ADA ramps. And so if we were to have them put those in according to the new alignment, you would end up having a ramp that's not actually adjacent to pavement. It would be further back. It's the rest of the street improvements that would need to be made for that ramp to be usable. And those street improvements will also require the relocation of power poles and other things that are more expensive and more complicated. So unfortunately, this ODOT ramp project came through, and they're not able to reflect that new alignment.
No, I understand that, and I'm
Mhm.
kind of expecting that. But
Mhm.
my thought is working with ODOT, tell them to postpone. I mean, it seems kind of ridiculous to put an ADA ramp and do all that work, it only can be tore out.
Right.
So I'm we want the H&H side, hold up until we get ready so that we can do the 4-lane. Seems like a lot of money to be wasted by doing all that work, only tearing it out. That's why I just throw that question.
And I agree. The problem is that there's not a established date for when that road construction would happen, since it is completely dependent on development. And so ODOT has their mandate from the lawsuit that they lost to repair and make all these ramps up to code, and they're not willing to just skip one because we don't have a reliable data on when that would actually occur.
Yeah, I was just throwing that out there, not necessarily skip it, but it just seemed like postpone it until things were. Save a lot of money, because it's not cheap.
No, it's not.
It cannot be cheap. I just throwing that out there. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question? Director Larson, I was just curious regarding the STIP project with the sidewalk. And I know the reasoning as to why it stops, and it looks like it's a ramp to nowhere. But maybe we could, since we don't have a communications director, can we put some communication out about that from the city level so that people would understand what's true and why?
Mhm.
I heard that somebody thought that maybe this happened and we coordinated with this company to decide these things, and I know that's not true, but if it could happen at a city level, I think that'd be helpful.
Sure. And I think it's worth mentioning here in this meeting, since it is covered by the press, to just kind of give a recap of how we got there. As you're all aware, that sidewalk project has been in the works for quite a number of years. And when it finally got moving in 2020, with the engineering designs that were started, ODOT came to us about the area underneath the railroad trestle to determine how that was going to work out. It was a rather frustrating process for the city because we are the ones with the least amount of power in this situation. Ultimately, ODOT examined the railroad trestle and the approach to it, and determined that there was no way they could build a sidewalk underneath the railroad trestle and comply with the regulations that they had in place. That's not to say that you can't build a sidewalk there. It's just that ODOT can't build a sidewalk there because ODOT is not able to take on that liability for putting the sidewalk under a trestle that is not usable and is not in the condition to be used. At the same time, the railroad, and from a business side sense, I think rightfully, is not willing to abandon that right of way, and they're not willing to abandon that trestle because they don't know if they're ever going to get it back. They'd rather repair it, but they don't have the funding to repair it yet, and ODOT wasn't putting forward the funding. And so it left us kind of at an impasse where ODOT couldn't complete the sidewalk unless the trestle was removed, and the railroad wasn't willing to remove the trestle. And so ultimately what ODOT decided was we will build it up to where we can build it, and then it would be put upon the city to either complete that sidewalk underneath the railroad trestle, or simply wait until the railroad trestle is either taken down or repaired, and then the sidewalk would continue at that time. That's not the solution that anybody wanted, but it was unfortunately the cards we were dealt. We have been meeting last week and actually just this morning, just this afternoon, I should say. City staff met last week, and then today met with a representative from the railroad to discuss options for that. We are going to be putting a proposal together to send to the railroad that would involve a temporary asphalt path, not concrete, but asphalt, but it would still be ADA compliant, as in a surface that you could roll a wheelchair along. And we're hoping that we can work with the railroad to see that done. And then at some point when that trestle is either repaired or removed, there would be a more permanent link made.
Thank you for that update for everybody.
In the meantime, I should add, ODOT has placed barriers there at the end of the sidewalks. And if we are looking at a longer period of time without a connection between the two, there will be a more permanent barrier put in place to signal to users that this is not an authorized path.
Thanks, Blair, for staying on top of that. This has been 10 years of frustration just to get the sidewalk in, so I'm just glad to see that. Started in 2012. So hopefully that can be completed.
You know what, the thing that's crazy for me is they made a two-lane concrete level thing there. I mean, it's wide enough to drive two cars on almost. It's kind of crazy. I think that's good.
You have the police department monthly report, but I guess an oversight, Chelsea, you can give us an idea on there was no finance report, about the finance director.
Sure. And then Matt Brown, who has been working as our interim finance director, has been very helpful on helping us go through a lot of various pieces. And actually, Matt, do you want to give a report?
Yeah.
Okay, that'd be great.
So, good evening. My name is Matt Brown. I'm your interim finance director, consultant extraordinaire. So what I have been working on the last several months is kind of a cleanup process of the previous several years of accounting. And we are to a point now where we had brought in a extra consultant to handle the main bank reconciliations. Kelsey and I met with them this afternoon because they had just finished July of 2021. So that amount of work for a full-time consultant was billed out at 60 hours to do that specific month's bank reconciliation. I had advised about bringing in a second consultant because I do not have the time to do the necessary work to do bank reconciliations at the level that I think is needed to clean up Sweet Home. So the consultant and Kelsey and I met today, completed July. They're going to assist us in the next 2 months. The hope is that as that person becomes more familiar with our process and how things are posted or not posted or should be posted, that it will become easier as we go throughout the year. But Kelsey has approved them to start working on the next couple months. I, in the background, am also working on a complete fund restructure, simplifying process for your financials. And my goal and our hope is that by the end of December and January timeframe, we have a brand new fund structure and a new budget to go through with you that we believe will be a lot easier for you and the community and staff to understand and follow. So that is our timeline, December, January timeframe, when we will be able to bring some actionable items back to you.
Mayor, if I may, originally we had hoped to take all of the bank reconciliations back in-house after our meeting this afternoon. Due to the complexity and some of the challenges of reconciling for multiple years at this point, we are going to try to move forward for at least a couple months with our outside consultant, and then we are going to be working in-house as best we can as well to help mitigate whatever kind of fund savings that we can. This is going to be a fairly large challenge, but we feel very confident with the staff we have, and I want to thank Matt Brown because he's been fantastic on helping us unravel some of this. So thank you.
Any questions, council? on that?
Mr. Mayor, I don't have a question, but I also would like to give a shout out to Cindy Robeck. I know she spent a lot of time trying to assist Matt in getting these things cleaned up. So just wanted to say thank you to Cindy.
And thank you, Councilor, for mentioning that. I'd actually like to bring Cindy back at a later date and thank her formally for all of her hard work. She has been really phenomenal and has been coming in on Saturdays and working extra hours to try to work through this. So huge thank you to Cindy.
Mr. Mayor, I got one question to Matt. Matt, be in this position.
In short, if I can best explain with an easy answer, it's that I believe the previous finance director and your previous city manager did not have proper checks and balances for items like bank reconciliations, updates to audits, those kind of things. When we go through the bank reconciliation, we see a lot of entries that should be there but are not, and then they're entered in several months later. There are entries that are entered several months later for things that should have happened in the past, even in previous fiscal years. So it's a matter of checks and balances. The great thing moving forward is that you have a city manager that is already familiar with being a finance director, so she will know what to look for and check for on a more regular basis when we get back up to that point and you hire another finance director.
It just baffles me that we got to this position. It really does. I'm really, really frustrated. We've been, now this has been going on since January. And they didn't even get the thing, we didn't get the thing done until August. And it's supposed to be done on December 30th. And the last 2 years that we had before 2020 was we asked for extensions on those, and we asked for one on this last one. And here we are today. And we still, it took 8 or 9 months to get that thing to the auditors. And we could have gotten nailed for that. The state of Oregon could have nailed us for that. They could have held back money. I talked to the lady up in Salem. We could have been in deep trouble here. And that really bothers me. So, okay, I'm done. I just wanted to make sure that we were aware of that.
Yep, we're very well familiar with working with the state auditor's office for the requirements, just from going through last audit that you completed for 2020. I will say on that note for the auditors, I was at a Oregon Finance Conference just earlier this month, and it was actually her that came and gave her presentation about audits and the requirements, and we had kind of a roundtable discussion with a bunch of finance directors around the state of Oregon that are having similar issues to either us or having issues with actually just finding auditors to do the audit. It's a practice that has started to kind of dwindle. A lot of CPA firms that used to do audits on a regular basis tend now not to renew contracts because honestly, they make more money doing more CPA work for taxes and everything else. The auditing stuff that they do for cities is kind of cream on the top, so to speak, for the lull period of tax season. So it is an issue that the state is aware of. We've been having discussions as a finance group with the auditors to find out what we can do with the state to make things better. It's a work in progress.
Thank you, Matt, for all your efforts.
Yep.
I'd like to say thank you too. We're very fortunate to have you. We're very fortunate to have the staff that we have. and our new city manager and the council that we have. And on a lighter note, we ran out of time last year to paint windows downtown. So we're starting in February. We're starting in November early on. We have to work around the weather. We have to work around availability of people. So I'd like the council to know that we will be starting painting windows. And if you know of youth groups and community artists and people, give me a call. And we will start going out, and I'm targeting our businesses so we can paint the town Christmas, and we'll get it done as quickly as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Nothing else from departments, directors, city attorney. Any council business good order?
Mr. Mayor, if I may. Chief, we talked a couple weeks ago about the speed on the highway and the work zone, and I was just hoping that you can maybe give an update of your meeting and some solutions you might have.
Yes, so I did mention that to our sergeants who are supervising our teams, and we have had people out there making stops. So I noticed that this past week, a couple of our officers have really been hitting it hard. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I have one more thing. Last time we met, I did announce the community meet and greet where people are going to be welcome to meet the new Chamber of Commerce Executive Director, City Manager, Fire Chief, Interim Police Chief, School Superintendent, and the Senior Center Executive Director. Tonight, I have flyers for everybody, so feel free to take one and to post it where others can see it. Thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, we have a new hanging in the gallery. Deb Cooley, a local artist, has hung her work for the next 6 weeks.
Good order? Not, we will adjourn at 7:50.